I think it's both a shame and a sham. I think that the next MacBooks are probably going to have Face ID.
Indeed. Hopefully.
And with a Face ID revamp, they will probably also bring
A better camera.
better camera.
Yeah, but what's the point if everybody covers it up anyways?
I mean, they're probably going to use the exact same component as the one that's in the iPhone 10, I would guess.
I really don't know how they're going to do that thickness wise, because it's so much thinner than a phone.
Oh, yeah. You're right. I forgot. It's true.
So they probably have to use like some crappy camera and hope the hope the IR illuminator is good enough.
Right.
Something.
All right. I'm going public on the video.
Okay. Where are the show notes? Show notes. How's it only Wednesday?
Oh, I know. Did you get a notification?
From? Oh, I have not. I have not.
Weird. Well, we're live.
Check
So.
YouTube. Yes, I see it live.
Cool.
So how do you want to start this week? Because if you want to properly start it, it really started on Sunday with April Fools.
Yeah, I don't feel like April Fool's was very interesting this year. I feel like
it's nothing really too good.
I feel like we should just jump right into Android Q, which I guess because it's kind of fresh on our minds.
Oh yes, very fresh.
Like an hour ago, fresh kind of. I don't know. What do you think is the most interesting thing here? I personally am a big fan of the changes that seem to be happening to navigation.
The emphasis is on the word seems, because Android Q Beta 2 seems so much more broken to me compared
It
to Beta 1.
is. It definitely is. The first one felt like borderline usable as a daily driver, and then this one is like, especially if you're dependent on the navigation system in any way, which I mean, any normal phone user really is. You know,
Are they though? Are they? I definitely feel that people just go back to the home screen. I don't I think like most people don't get multitasking, and that the home screen is their multitasking.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's probably true for a lot of people for sure. Especially, I mean, I think that might have been less true actually with the previous navigation system before Android P. This one, the one that's on Android P, feels a little too convoluted and confusing to be as natural as the old system.
Yeah, and when you have a button, when you had the old recents button, people click that. They click what they see. The complaint about gestures is historically that they're not visible, they're not apparent, and Google has to do a lot of onboarding for new users to get them to understand that there's a new action to swipe up.
For sure. But I guess for those that don't know yet, because this did just start rolling out, this change that they're rolling out with Android Q beta 2 is basically bringing the navigation system more in line with the iPhone 10, or I guess the system that came with iOS at the advent of the iPhone 10, which is a much simpler system, I believe, than the current one that they introduced first in the, well, I guess, was it beta 2 of Android P?
Yes, beta 2 Android P at I/O 2018.
And that's another interesting thing, is that today is beta 2 for Android Q, and it came a little bit earlier than years past. And actually, given that Google has kind of used Google I/O as I guess, the stage in some ways for introducing some of the more user-facing changes, it's surprising, I think, personally, to see all the user-facing changes that have come with this version. given, I mean, I mean, we were talking about it yesterday in the Slack chat. Like, is there even going to be enough to really even talk about today on the show, or much less make a video about? And it turns out the answer is definitely yes. There's lots of changes in this version.
Yeah. So I guess the most obvious reason why Google is doing that is they want some more developer support by the time Beta 3 arrives. And they're at I/O. Maybe they want developers that are attending the conference to ask them if they have questions, to peer review what they've done so far to adapt to Android Q. But yeah, as you were saying, a lot of more changes than we expected. So besides gesture navigation, did you have any other highlights on this release?
I think the progress bar on the music notifications is really cool.
Very useful.
Yeah, and although it does take up a lot of space, so I don't know how
Yeah,
that will.
it's maybe Google has to like not prioritize cover art as much and move things around. It is a very useful tweak, especially when you're doing podcast or anything longer than a song.
Yeah, and then the other thing that's really notable, I think, is these bubbles, which is basically Google deciding that this multi-year-old kind of concept of chat heads is suddenly a very good idea.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
official.
many apps, third-party apps, have tried it, and now Google is saying, yeah, we're just going to make this an OS level feature and expect app developers, all app developers, it looks like, or most app developers, to adopt it in some way. So it's
Yeah, the
interesting.
official guidance from Dave Burke, Android VP of Engineering, was we've seen all these third-party apps do this for years now, and now we're bringing it into the platform officially, and so that we can do it in a streamlined way for developers to adopt, a privacy-conscious way, and closely integrating it with the existing notification system, so that it's not too much of a challenge. But in the long run, this is a big shift in terms of usability. In a way, it makes Android more complicated. I know what they're going for is to always have those quick actions that you want, just a bubble or tap away. But on the other side, it's really convoluting the interface with these bubbles popping over. And when you actually open it, you have to switch around between several. It just adds it literally adds a new layer on top of the existing Android OS, and that's up for debate whether that's a more efficient, a more useful change, or whether it's not.
Yeah. So do we know exactly how this? I mean, in the quote from Google itself, it says that, or was it us that wrote this? Bubbles are built on into the notification system. How exactly? I've only seen this screenshot of these bubbles along the bottom of the screen, and each bubble tappable to bring up the chat interface. How exactly is this integrated into the notification system?
So I think their idea, what Google means by that is, when you bring down the notification shade. Okay, so looking at this doc. No,
Is that clear yet?
bubbles are created via the notification API. You send your notifications as normal. If you want to add to your bubble, you just need to add extra data to it. So I guess the implication is that it's just an addendum. It's not really a whole new thing as much as it's really building on what the Google's doing with notifications.
Gotcha. So it's more of an extension of the existing notification system, which
Yeah,
makes sense. But
is Google's forte. Like compared to iOS, Google's widely regarded as having a better notification system, but Google's
yeah,
really taking it a step further with bubbles.
yeah, I think that I think these bubbles make most sense, and they make the most sense in the way that we've seen them used up to now. So in the
Yes.
past, I mean, Facebook Messenger is probably the most popular and notorious example of this feature being used. And even as of today, I'm pretty sure that Messenger for Android still lets you enable chat heads if you want to. And so I think that these bubbles will probably be most used Although I don't think that they're limited to this. I think that they'll be most used
No.
by messaging apps.
Yeah,
Um,
Google provided other. They said that if you want quick access to a note, or if you're seeing like a schedule, a bus schedule, and you want to have live updates, you can put it there. Those are the two examples that Google touted.
yeah, but as a system level like feature, I think the first apps we'll see it actually adopt this would probably be apps like Slack and RIP Hangouts and RIP Allo and
Messenger.
Facebook Messenger and yeah, those popular messaging apps that people are already using every day. Those will probably be the first ones we see actually adopt this in the weeks after Android Q is launched later this year. But yeah, this was what Google thought was the biggest feature for Android Q, but I don't know if I agree. I think that the navigation stuff is the biggest change, or the biggest thing that people will notice. I mean, especially if this new. The interesting thing here is that the Android Q Beta 2 introduced this new gesture navigation system, but it's very, very like unbaked. It's extremely buggy as of right now, and it's
And
barely usable. And what?
I promise you, it's even worse in the Pixel 2, which I'm using to test Android Q. It's
Yeah.
very so rough.
And on top of this, XDA really, really quickly after this was discovered, found another hidden toggle for a setting to enable what looks to be getting rid of the home button completely and replacing it with a thin bottom bar that looks very similar to the one,
Too
as I mentioned,
similar.
very similar to the iOS iPhone 10 style navigation bar. And if I would guess, that this is the first sign of the nav system that will launch on the Pixel 4. And I think on a higher level, this is also interesting because Google is revising the navigation for Android and for, I guess, more specifically the Pixel devices. 2 years in a row now. So I think both of our takes last year was that with such a big overhaul, ditching what was 8, 9 years of a previous system, like many years, and replacing that with what we came to know as Android gestures with P. It seems like Google's decided, that's just not good enough. We're not happy with it, and they're just going to revamp it again. And hopefully this year it'll actually be. They'll settle on it. And that's really interesting to me. It's not super surprising given that this is Google, and Google is quick to throw out things that don't work out. We'll talk about that more at the end of the show. But at the same time, I thought with last year, with them actually releasing it, if it wasn't ready and if they weren't sold that this was going to be a multi-year commitment, I didn't think that they would have launched the half-baked gesture system that they launched last year. But I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, in going back to what like the regular end user, what they expect, this constant change, I think, is too much to expect from the end user. Google should have gotten it right the first time. So because these incremental changes, so last year they went from 3 buttons to 1 button and sometimes 2, and with the back button. I don't really think what users learned in Pi really carries over to Q in terms of when they just introduced a one gigantic bar or gesture strip at the bottom. I think it's to the end user. They're going to just see this as somewhat confusing. Why are they changing it again? I haven't really gotten used to the new one you introduced at Pi, and you're already changing it up again. So I think this could have been handled much better.
Actually, I think that's really really interesting about this, and this is all assuming that this new system that we're seeing as of Beta 2 is what ends up shipping on the Pixel 4, which, as mentioned multiple times already, it's going to be replacing that bottom the bottom nav bar in Android with a thin navigation strip that we've seen on the iPhone 10, as well as the ability to just swipe quickly left and right through apps, just like you can do on the iPhone 10. Assuming that this is what actually happens, this actually changes a lot of very fundamental navigation dynamics with Android that the last nav system overhaul with Android P didn't change. So as you mentioned, this back button concept is going away if they do pursue this new version of navigation, and that's a big deal because that has been around since day one in Android, and it's always been, in my opinion, a problem because apps very confusingly take advantage of this bottom of the screen back button and in-app back buttons, which are typically located in the top left corner of the app, and that basically gives you two different back navigation options, and it can be confusing, I think, for end users who aren't already just daily Android users, how to use those back buttons and which one to use, because the bottom back button, and it got even more confusing with P, because then the bottom back button became kind of responsive to whether or not that back button should even be there, and then so I feel like it got even more confusing with Android P than it was before. And so that's a whole paradigm of navigating Android that's going away. It seems like if this is where the navigation system's actually going with Android Q. And yeah, I mean, it's a big change. And then the other thing is that this bottom nav bar that's been in Android since the earliest days, that going away also, to the benefit of apps, third-party apps, gives apps more screen real estate to use that up until now they've not been able to use at all, because it's just been a fixed kind of bottom home software home button. So that's another, I think, benefit, is that there's going to be more screen space for apps now.
Yeah, but again, it depends on how developers take advantage of it and how soon they do. Right. So, as always.
Yeah. And I think that's probably why we're seeing it this early, is that I think developers are getting, with today's release, are getting tipped off like, yeah, there's some pretty big changes coming. And it will be interesting, though, as of right now, we still don't really know exactly how this is all going to work. Just kind of like last year with Beta 2, the navigation system was very unfinished. And so we didn't actually have an idea of how it worked on a fundamental level until the very final release in the fall. Just like that, this one, if you enable that bottom like nav strip thing, there's no way as of right now to even go like navigate home. There's no swipe up to go home or anything. So it's very unfinished right now. Hopefully we'll see with Beta 3 or Beta 4. I don't know. Which one do you think is coming at I/O now, 3 or 4?
Oh, 3. Definitely okay. 3. Has to be. Yeah. And that's where presumably we'll see other OEMs announce their versions, their own beta programs, which should be nice.
Indeed. But yeah, other than that, I mean, there's plenty more changes. You can go over to 95google.com and check out Abner's roundup on everything new in Android Q Beta 2. There's just so much better Google account integration. There's more prominent music notifications on the always on display. App permissions menu is now called Permissions Manager. There's tons of little minor things that you can go check out. Also, notably, a lot of people were complaining about the requirement that you had to, was it left you had to swipe on Beta 1? And yeah, so you had to swipe left to dismiss notifications. And now Google has opened up the option to also, if you would like to, swipe right to dismiss notifications.
Yeah.
Which is appreciated for some people who have a lot of, we talked about this last week, muscle memory for one direction over the other. So that's great. So yeah, that's Android Q Beta 2, and it should be, you can go download factory images and OTAs right now. And if your device is in the beta program, you should be seeing the update appear over the air. So that's that. Also this week, I guess we could talk about a couple different things. We're already starting to see some more hints about what's coming for hardware later this year.
Yes, so we're starting with birth instead of death. So yeah, uh, earlier this week we saw our first reference of Pixel 4 in the Android open source project. It was just a minor reference in contrasting an underlying system feature to Pixel 3. So I think this may have been a more throwaway reference, but nonetheless, Pixel 4 that's highly likely what it's going to be called, even if we didn't get this Aesop reference. So
Yeah,
it's
and
coming.
this reference was one of those I think was kind of hard to tell. Like, is this Googler? I don't know. These are always kind of they're halfway pointless because everyone assumes that the Pixel 4 is coming anyway, and so in that sense, it's not news at all.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, and this is a silly question, I admit, but the question is does this particular engineer that made this commit, does he in fact know that the
No.
Google Pixel 4 exists, or is he just talking about it the same way anyone would talk about it?
Yeah.
Obviously, the Pixel 4 exists. Actually, we have sources that have independently told us that the Pixel 4 exists, and actually, the Pixel 4 was already finalized pretty much. So, yeah,
It's
it's
coming.
happening. It's happening, and this was just the first time that a Googler. I hope they don't get fired or in trouble.
No, they
Probably not.
won't. Most
But
certainly not.
this is the first time that a Googler officially acknowledged that it exists. So that's a big deal. The other thing that happened this week is this so-called Nest Hub Max, which
Yes.
is a very, very, very weird name, in my opinion. If you want to
So,
give us the basics on that.
okay, so the on Friday, I believe, we saw the Google Store's homepage that shows all their smart home products working together. They had this reference to a product called the Next Nest Hub Max, which is obviously an amalgam of Nest, the Home Hub, and the Google Home Max. And it said that it had a high-res 10-inch display, a built-in Nest Cam, surprising, and stereo speakers. So we can see how each part of that name comes into play and it's reflected in the feature set. But when once put together, we have this really well. I'm sure you and I didn't expect this to come so early in the year.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are really weird about this so-called leak, in my opinion. Um, I guess the first thing to me is the timing of it, which, you know, it seems unlikely or it's at least weird to me that someone working on copy for the Google Store website um, could in any way accidentally include details as specific as having a 10-inch screen about a device that's not launching for presumably half a year, unless it's launching sooner than that. If there's going to be a Google hardware event sometime before Google I/O, which seems like not going to happen, or if this device launches at Google I/O, whatever the case may be, I would guess, given how the device is described, that precedent is that there's going to be a hardware event this fall, and this sounds like a device that would be announced at that hardware event. And so 6 months away, something like this with this many details, it's just weird. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the name. The name's a little bit confusing to me for a couple of reasons. One, as we reported, I had a tip last year that said that Google was moving away from the Nest brand and wanted to actually bring the Nest products kind of in under the umbrella of this Google Home / Google first party hardware brand. I don't know what that brand would be. It would probably be a completely new brand name for just home security stuff. So I heard about that, and so just knowing that, and I don't, obviously that was a while ago, and anything can change. Anything could have changed. I don't have any news or any updates on that. So for all I know, that could be nothing. But that is weird. This would suggest that they're sticking with the Nest brand, which would contradict that. But on top of that, this name is just weird. Like you mentioned, it's kind of an amalgam of 3 existing brands and just slapping them all together as to make a new product name. And that's,
Yeah,
I don't know.
it definitely feels like the name. you're using context clues to figure out to name it, or whoever was responsible for updating the site. It definitely seems like they picked out just the features of the existing products to come up with a name for this product that they're adding.
Yeah.
So it could be that could be the actual name, or it could just be a placeholder, but a placeholder that looks really, it looks too good of a placeholder. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weirdly too good of a placeholder and just wrong too, or it just seems wrong slash early slash inaccurate at the same time. I think one thing that's interesting about it is that we actually do know that there is a product that kind of aligns with what is described here. So there is a device that R. Kyle Bradshaw actually, if you would like to go find it, you could actually head over to our site and find Alphabet Scoop. I think it was episode, oh man, it was episode 42, where we mentioned that we had a little bit of a chat about this thing that Kyle Bradshaw, had found in the Fuchsia source code about a device codenamed Sherlock, which, according to him and according to the code that he dug up, shared a lot of similarities with the standard Google Home Hub. So he guessed that this would be a Google Home Hub Max of sorts, and the evidence he found suggested that it had a 10-inch display at a proportionally similar resolution to the admittedly low resolution display that's on the Google Home Hub.
Mm-hmm.
So given that background, we do know that some kind of 10-inch smart display, first party, assumably smart display, exists inside Google as a prototype somewhere. It's just that the name Nest Hub Max and the fact that it leaked at this time just makes this particular leak seem kind of unreliable. It's just weird.
Yeah, and the way they presented the features, those are the marketing lines. The way they the three lines that were spotted on the Google Store page, that sounds like actual copy versus I don't even know what the alternative is. That seems like finalized copy that you give to a person when you're ready to launch a product.
Yeah, but at the same time, I will say that, I mean, when I saw this at first, I thought, if I was a Google front end dev who was in charge of like just building this page for the Google store, and I was building kind of a mock-up to, not something that was meant to be published, but I was just building a mock-up page that would eventually be published, and I just wanted to fill it in with some fake lorem ipsum type kind of content before it actually got filled in with the real content. Like if that scenario was playing out and I was just writing lorem ipsum for a page like this, then Nest Hub Max and 10-inch, like none of the things that were written seemed too far off from just being something that someone made up as filler content. Not to say that that's what happened, but it seems like an interesting possibility to me. I don't know. We'll see.
But okay, so what do we think of this device if it had those specs? 10-inch,
I mean,
a
it sounds
Nest
like,
Cam, it's good speakers.
yeah, it sounds like it's just a larger Google Home Hub with a Nest Cam, right? I mean,
yeah, security focused maybe.
yeah, but what would the interface be? I mean, what if it's a 10-inch smart display? Then it would have to have some kind of smart display features. So I don't see how, just saying security focused. Yeah, maybe from a branding perspective, but how could they change the interface to make it more security focused? I don't know. Like, to me, it seems like a smart display is a smart display, and I don't see how that real estate of a display, could be used in a better way for something that was more Nest centered than just Google Home.
I don't think it's as much as real estate as where you can or where you should place this new device. I assume that Google wants a security focused device, so Google would advise you to place it in a central location in your home maybe overlooking a door on your living room, where the camera has a clear line of sight, maybe something like that. But in terms of actual features, I agree with you. I think beyond that home view where you can control different smart home gadgets in your house, I don't think there's too much user-facing security that you can actually interact with on the touchscreen.
Yeah, there's nothing. I mean, if you're going to have a 10-inch touchscreen, you would. I mean, the best use of that space and the device itself, I think, is to just put on what the Google Home Hub has on it already. I don't know. It's weird. I can't. I mean, I guess. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
It would make more sense, in my opinion. So I think that it would make more sense from a branding perspective to launch this as Google Home Hub Max
Yes.
with Nest, right?
Definitely.
Like Google Home Hub Max with Nest Cam, right? So it's like the Nest brand still supports the product and still, it means something. Nest Cam means something to consumers.
Mm-hmm.
It means really crappy, laggy streams that
service.
you can barely use. I'm just kidding. That's partly true, but yeah, I mean, I think leaving the product open, like, because if you call it Nest Hub Max, then that just sends a lot of mixed signals about what this is. I don't know if that really tells the consumer what the product actually is for.
Yeah, especially since I doubt most consumers have heard of the Max. So it's interesting that presumably the Max comes from the 10-inch screen over the Home Hub 6-inch, but also the audio. It's telling that its audio features, the stereo improved sound. So that Max could refer to both size and both audio prowess. So
also, if
again,
there's a Nest Hub Max, where's the standard Nest Hub?
yeah, indeed.
That's another thing that's confusing about the branding, is that it suggests that there's a non-Max version. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. I think if I were to guess right now, I would guess that that's not the name of the product. It's actually going to launch. But it does add fire to the fire, or adds fuel to the fire. Adds fire to the fire. It adds fuel to the fire of rumors that suggest that this 10-inch Google Home Hub Max device exists and will probably be coming this year. So
yeah, and it's
that's my takeaway.
It's shaping up to be an exciting fall with all these devices.
Yep, and if you remember, Nikkei's report earlier this year suggested that, I guess, a couple other things are also coming, including a revamped standard Google Home,
which is interesting,
and a new Nest Cam, which was left very vague, which could be, I don't know, maybe it's this. I don't know. We'll see. Also, apparently, the watch is also happening finally. So I'll mention this here on Alphabet Scoop because we have half an hour still. So apparently we should expect some kind of watch stuff to be seen at WWDC. We don't know really what that means. WWDC at Google I/O. Man, sorry for that.
It's been a week.
I feel like that's the cardinal sin right there.
I'm sure you'll hear about it.
I will. I'll get plenty of DMs. Go for it. Film my DMs. At Google I/O, apparently, we're going to hear about some Wear OS / Google first-party watch stuff, which is really interesting. We don't know what that means. We don't know what it is, but that's the tip. That's what we've heard. It could be Wear OS 3.0, or what's the branding now? The letters, I forgot.
H. I think we're on H right now.
Wear OS I will be shown at Google I/O. So I don't know. We'll see. I would guess it'll be a major revamp of Wear OS. Google's probably just gonna try again. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think we're gonna see hardware at I/O? It seems like there's so much hardware that does not like it. I don't know. The Nest Hub Max thing seems like way too early to be a fall launch. The Google Pixel 3a is still left up in the air. We have no idea what's going on with that. Is
Yeah,
that going to show up at I/O?
all these hardware devices are in play, but the only one I see actually launching is a watch, because if you believe the rumors, it was delayed from last year, and they need to announce it while it's still competitive. So a watch is the only device that I think is credible, is likely, but also for the other reason that Google needs to show it's serious about watches, about Wear OS, if they really want to do this. So I/O is a good time as any.
Yeah, I think that
Who
the
knows?
future of Wear OS has been determined at this point, and that future is two things. It's Wear OS future comes in two parts. One part is Wear OS Android Wear / Wear OS being open to third parties and all these fashion brands taking it and using it to sell smartwatches with their fashion brand on it. That being that's part one of Wear OS, and that's there's tons of brands that have been doing that, and a lot of them are under the Fossil Group, and it's like not that hasn't done terribly. I don't think. I mean, it's been. Obviously, in the smartwatch market, I think all those makers combined all make up like less than 10% of the smartwatch market or something as of the most recent data. So it's been bad. Don't get me wrong, but it hasn't been dismal. All those makers, yeah, it's a business, right? Like how many years has it been since Wear OS debuted? 4 or 5 now. Which is crazy how fast time flies. But those makers, a lot of those makers were on board early on, and they're still on board. So apparently there's something in it, and I think that's part one of what Wear OS is going to continue to do, and I think that's what we're going to see at Google I/O. I think we'll see. I would guess we're going to see like Wear OS 3.0, which is just Google saying, "Yeah, we've been working on Wear OS in the background for a while, and we're just going to try again." And I would guess that the other part of this whole Wear OS future is Google having a Google Pixel first-party modified. Heavily Googleified and optimized version of Wear OS that will be proprietary to themselves, and they'll be trying to push a Pixel watch.
Yeah.
I think that's what's the future. I think that's the future of Wear OS. I would not be surprised. I mean, I think so. This is kind of my theory: is that Google's been working on Wear OS in the background and making strides probably in ways that we haven't seen, because these strides have been made with the intention of being launched alongside a first-party watch. So I think that what we'll see is a lot of those improvements and changes come to Wear OS 3.0. A lot of those more fundamental level changes coming to Wear OS 3.0. And then Google will launch their, kind of like what happens with Android every year. Android Q is going to launch beta 3, at I/O, and then the version that Google actually ships on the Pixel 4 will be somewhat different and optimized for the Pixel 4. I think we'll see the same thing happen this year with Wear OS for the first time. We haven't seen that as of yet. I think this is the year that finally happens. That's my guess.
And like with Wear OS, like sure, maybe Google's been working on it in the background, but I think at the end of the day, optimization is what this platform needs. It's not third-party buy-in. I think most people just need to see notifications, and they need to have those notifications come in a quick manner, in an efficient manner, in a battery-efficient manner. I just think at the end of the day, the underlying OS needs to improve. That's what it's missing: stability. It's missing optimization to the available hardware that Qualcomm has released. It's all just a problem of optimization. Like I've said before, I think the OS is good. You can swipe in all 4 directions from the watch face to quickly access different things. I think that's a good idea. Google should stick with that and just make it a good, solid experience for the devices it's selling on, especially its flagship, if that's coming.
Yeah, and what about Google Coach? I think that was it David over at Android Police that first reported on this? I think that David heard about it because I think the Pixel Watch actually was like borderline going to launch last year, and I think that seems like one of those features that will be on top of Wear OS that will not be a core Wear OS functionality that Google will launch alongside. For those that don't know, this Google Coach is basically an assistant-enabled or AI-enabled coach for fitness and health stuff. And it sounded like it was getting close to shipping, actually, based on David's report. He wrote about it pretty matter of factly. So I'm assuming he heard this from a Googler. So it seems like, I mean, I don't think that's something we'll see at I/O. Maybe we will, but I think that's something that's going to launch alongside first-party watch hardware later this year.
And the thing about that, right now the Google Fit theme is in the new Google Health division. So I'm not sure if the entire division is ready to make a grand debut with its first product, and having Google a major update to Google Fit or this Google Coach thing be that first update built on Wear OS could be a bit worrying. So I think it needs some polish. That they need to take some time with Google Coach, make it actually useful versus just delivering notifications here and there about increasing a step count or whatever.
Yeah. Whatever the case, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens with Wear OS this year. Hopefully it'll be
much potential for health, especially.
It'll be not terrible. We'll see. In other Made by Google news, there's another device which you may remember if you've been following closely with our coverage, which we talked about a lot last fall before the 10.9 event, which is what we thought to be our suspicion at the time was that this was a Pixelbook 2, a successor to the standard Pixelbook and a very close sibling to Nocturne, which ended up being the Pixel Slate, which, as you know, launched last fall. This device, codenamed Atlas, has a lot actually in common with with Nocturne in terms of internal specifications. You can go type in everything that we know about potential Pixelbook successor Atlas in Google or something if you want to find our article about it. But it has a lot of things in common with Nocturne and little details like with keyboard layout and stuff like that we thought made it suggested that it was a Google first-party hardware product. And we still don't know for sure. But the device leaked via, I think, a Chromium commit.
Yes, Chromium commit video, two attached videos.
Right, a couple of videos attached to a Chromium commit that showed this hardware. And honestly, it doesn't, at first glance, this is our first time we're seeing this hardware. It doesn't, to me, look like a Pixelbook successor. What do you think? What's your gut?
It looks. My first thought was it looks like an HP Chromebook. It's very distinctly different stylings, especially from the Pixelbook. It's kind of rounded in the way the Pixel Slate is, in that new softer edges and that kind of feel. But it really does not look like Google's design language.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to me. I don't think. I mean, to me, I think it screams HP based on first glance. One thing that stuck out to me is how the top row buttons, the left and the right buttons on the top row, are rounded, kind of with a wider radius than they were on the Pixelbook. But I mean, it's hard to say. Who's to say, right? I think the thing is, like, you know, with the Pixel Slate, we saw some very similar Chromium internal video or photo leaks with the Pixel Slate, and got a little glimpse at kind of like the keyboard a little bit.
Yeah.
And when we first saw that, I mean, when I first saw that, it didn't scream Google either. I mean, I saw the rounded keys; it looked like a Logitech keyboard, and I said, you know, this doesn't look like first-party Google hardware at all. So, and I mean, honestly, it's still the Pixel Slate. The only thing that tips it off as being clearly a Pixel is the G logo on the back. You know, it doesn't have anything that's signature Google Pixel. You know, there's no top third glass. There's no, you know, it just doesn't have the same hardware design language that the Pixelbook had or any other Pixel branded device really has at all. So it's hard to say anything about, you know, this. It's hard to say definitively that this is or is not Google hardware, but I agree with you that at first glance, I'm just kind of skeptical. Another interesting aspect of this is that there is a MacBook-esque kind of product name filler label right above the keyboard, which is just, it does, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. And we've seen other Chrome OS makers do similar type things. And I wouldn't say, as a matter of fact, that Google wouldn't do it, but as of yet, they've never done that on a laptop. So if they did do the word Pixelbook there written in text above the keyboard, this would be the first time. they've done that. So I don't know. It's weird. Um, Also, another aspect is you can kind of see, I don't know if you agree with this, but you can kind of see where there's like a padding around the edge of the top lid.
Mm,
And to me, that would suggest that this is not a $1,000 laptop.
yeah, you can
It,
always.
to me, that suggests that this is kind of lower end or plastic in build.
Yeah, the material, even the keyboard materials, it doesn't look like it's metal. It looks like plastic, which could be a new direction for Google and the Pixelbook lineup.
could be.
Pixel stays premium. Maybe another change to that. But
Yeah.
it's, I guess Google might, that there is some logic, sense for them to do a mass market Chromebook with their branding, but that's really competing with its partners that just dominate that $200, $250 Best
Yeah.
Buy store line. It's
I don't know.
again interesting story around it that they'd have to tell.
For sure. Very interesting. All right, so that's pretty much all of the potential upcoming births that are coming later this year. This potential Atlas, supposed Nest Hub Max, and first mention of the Pixel 4, which is of those three, obviously the most certain that's coming this year. But let's talk about deaths. So this week was a really, really really big week for Google product deaths, and every week is a big week for Google product deaths, pretty much. In recent memory. But this week was particularly big. The two big ones, in my opinion, are Google Plus, obviously, and Inbox by Gmail. So, moment of silence for those two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Google Plus is gone. All the consumer Google Plus accounts just started shutting down around noon on Tuesday, or was it Monday? Forget.
Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday. And Inbox by Gmail shut down yesterday too. So
Yeah, I didn't care for Inbox. I know that's a controversial opinion.
I didn't. I mean, I was not. I used it for the first 2 years as a replacement for Gmail, and I actually did get used to the main feature that I really got used to was the reminders. So like you could just like swipe your email away and basically archive it until a certain date or time, and then have it remind you about it and bring it back into the top of your inbox. I used that. I used Inbox for 2 years, but I just
There are some reports that Inbox is still alive, so but it's going to happen. And I would say my biggest gripe with Inbox was the idea that when you archive something, you didn't mark it as read. That was just so annoying to me, that the idea of having unread email somewhere in your email app. But that's a minor digression. But all the best features, well, most of the features have made it into Gmail proper, and Google has announced that stuff like travel bundles are eventually making their way into the main Gmail app, and we have seen some leaks about those features making its way into Gmail. So I think Inbox users should just hold tight for a bit, and maybe we'll get all these new features soon in Gmail.
Yep. And yeah, if you're listening to this and you are a hardcore user of Inbox and you found yourself unable to use the app in the last couple of days, it seems like there are modified APKs that allow you to use it for now to some extent. It seems like some features are broken already, but I don't know. Some people are just desperate and kind of like not willing to go into the first stage of grief.
Yeah.
Or just deeply habitual. I don't know, but yeah, that's an option. If anyone listening is just a hardcore user. The same can't be said about Google Plus, which I haven't touched in probably a year or two. So I'm not altogether all that sad about that one.
It was an exciting beginning, clearly. That invite system, it was so cool to get an invite. All the tech people were there. The discussions are pretty solid early on.
Yeah, that's funny. Actually, our Seth has a pretty interesting or funny anecdote about that. He was actually one of the earliest peoples to get Google Plus. And because of that, he was, I guess it seems like the algorithms like highly recommended his account to like the first like million people that signed up
Oh man.
to add to circles. At that point, it was, you know, adding to circles and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think Seth ended up in a million people's, more than a million people's stranger circle or whatever, like people I don't know. And so his Google account or Google Plus account since day one has said like more than 1 billion followers or something like that. But like, it's hilarious because almost everyone, almost all those normal people that signed up in the first couple weeks of Google Plus never used it again. So he has a ghost town of 1 million people that follow him on Google Plus, and it's hilarious. I'm just including this anecdote now because you've never talked about this or had any reason to talk about it. But apparently, well, we've actually tried, you know, to capitalize on his 1 million followers, and you know, at different times in 9 to 5 Google's history, we've tried posting our articles to his account, and you know, you would think with like 1 point something million followers that you would at least get a few pluses, right? Like you know, like getting getting 3+1s on an article posted on his account of 1 million followers. You would think you'd get at least 3+1s. But I'm pretty sure the data shows that every time we've tried sharing an article through his account, that it got very little to zero interaction. So
wild.
Just a funny little anecdote about Google Plus that relates to 9 to 5 Google, but yeah, I mean, I actually wrote an article or kind of compiled an article from all of the rest of the team about what Google Plus meant to us, and I think there's a common thread of it. It had some meaning, at least. A lot of people met people on there that were also Google Plus users, and I for one kind of got my whole start writing on Google Plus around the time Google Glass launched, and there's at one point a pretty significant Google Glass community on Google Plus.
Yeah.
And that kind of connects to what I've said in that article, is that Google Plus really at its best and in the height of its use popularity was really just a special little corner of the web for the biggest of Google fans to share photos and share experiences with Android and Google Glass and all these other niche Google products. I actually personally ran one of the biggest communities on Google Plus, which was the Wear OS community. It had hundreds of thousands of members, I think. And that, I mean, you'd be amazed, honestly, if you're not a Google Plus user, never have used Google Plus, there was very much a lively community for some amount of time. Yes. In these little niche communities of people that were talking about very specific things, most of them being Google products. So Google Plus will not be missed, but it will be a good memory.
Yes. I guess that's Google's best outcome. And forgetting the privacy leak that led to its death. Most people forgot about that. It was literally a privacy bug or potential privacy breach.
I wouldn't say that led to its death. I would say it was an excuse for its death.
That is true. Good excuse. Well, it died, yes, but it kind of got upgraded and kicked into business class. What's the
of that? Yeah, now Google Plus, it lives on as a business G Suite product, which I wonder what the usage numbers on that are.
G Plus is definitely nicer than like a internal, what do they call it? Intranet. It's definitely nicer than internet. So looks nicer. You can do more stuff. So,
yeah, and Facebook has a similar product for business. Facebook for Business, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Which is a similar kind of intranet type social network for, you know, for small businesses, or I guess large businesses too. Yeah, I would guess that Google Plus, G Suite Google Plus is probably
do fine.
Probably going to struggle a little bit. I don't know. I would guess that it's just not gonna be super popular. Although I do know that Facebook for Business is pretty popular, so maybe it has a chance. I don't know. Anyways, I think that pretty much covers most things. Another thing that shut down this week was the Google URL shortener.
Yeah, that was a bit of a shame. I think people trusted that link, or maybe Google didn't want to be responsible for all the scammy stuff associated with URL shorteners.
Yeah,
So
I don't know. I used, I mean, that was my go-to URL shortener.
yeah, same.
Because it was just quick and easy. Yeah, so I'll miss that one for sure. I've actually already missed it because I've needed to shorten a couple URLs in the last few weeks, and I've had to use Tiny URL, which is like
Oh no,
the
that's
the
worse.
OG.
Bitly, man.
Bitly or
Tiny
Tiny.
URL looks like so. No, no.
Yeah, so I think that pretty much rounds out the show. Anything else we need to talk about? I think we're good.
Yeah, that's good. As you said at the top, lackluster April Fools. Oh, it was Gmail's 15th birthday, in which we on Monday, and we got features like scheduling email,
Indeed.
which is scheduling email.
What was your favorite of all the not so great April Fools jokes? What was your favorite this year?
Waymo had a pretty good one for Waymo pets. So your pet can ride in a Waymo, get transported around. It was mostly a funny video, but besides that, yeah.
Waymo Pet. I actually missed that one. I'll have to go look that one up. My favorites. I have two for different reasons. One being the D-brand Air Power skin, which was timely and hilarious. I think D-brand didn't know any better than anyone whether or not Air Power was actually going to launch or get canceled. Obviously, it got canceled, so I'm sure that they were all prepped to launch Air Power skins this week, and they decided to launch them anyway and
There
charge
was ways to spend $4.
$4.01, which is April 1st, if you didn't notice. Yeah, my other favorite one was the T-Mobile phone booth.
Oh, the box. You like that?
Well, I mean, I like it in a sense that I actually thought it was real. Like I thought it was, they launched it the day before April Fool's, and I just fell for it. Like I thought it was actually real. I was like, this is actually a good idea. All cellular carriers should have these. I mean, I've definitely had that problem where I would like to just like step in a booth when I'm walking down the street instead of having to yell at the top of my lungs and charge my phone for a minute or whatever. Like that's not a bad idea.
Okay.
You know, like a little booth of a Serenity booth in the middle of every city. Like, I don't know, like put them on every corner. I'm down.
You're kind of selling it. You're kind of selling the concept to me. I'm sure a startup might run with that. Keep it clean, keep it secure. That's something.
Put some essential oils in there and a nightcap or what. I don't know. It sounds like a good idea to me. And then, the other thing that was so great about it was they called it phone booth E, and they said they were basically just making fun of AT&T with the 5G E.
Yeah, that was my favorite part of that. The burn.
That's great. That was great. But yeah, other than that, I think April Fool's was kind of boring. But
yeah, quiet.
There's always next year. I'm ready for this. I'm ready for just no more April Fool's jokes. But
yeah, it's fun. It's whimsical.
It's definitely on brand for Google for sure.
Oh, definitely.
Anyways, until next week, you can tune into Alphabet Scoop here every week. We record this podcast every Wednesday and publish every Thursday for every Thursday morning on all your favorite podcasting platforms such as iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Google Podcasts. No updates on podcasts this week. Google Play, and you can also listen directly over at 9to5google.com. Thanks for tuning in as always. Thanks, Admer, for joining me, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Later.